Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtaki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Namaha Pankajanaභaya Namaha Pankajamaline Namaha Pankajanetraya Namaste Pankajangri Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam Sangopangastra Parshadam Yagyai Sankirtana Praye Yajantihi Sumedasa Akama Sarva Kamo Va Moksha Kama Udaradi Tivrena Bhakti Yogena Yajante Purusham Param Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yatkripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hare Krishna Gurve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namaha. Hare Krishna, dear worshipable devotees, thank you so much for joining. We are reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 9, chapter number 4, text 18 to 20. These are a set of very, very important verses talking about Sri Ambarish Maharaj, the son of Nabhaga, as we were reading in this chapter. So let's talk about his wonderful qualities, his devotion to the Supreme Lord, to Sri Guru, to the Vaishnavas, by complete absorption. He's the epitome of complete using everything in Krishna's service. So let's read these beautiful verses. Savai manah Krishna padara vindayor vachansi vaikuntha gunanu varnane karau harira mandira marjinadishu shrutim chakar achyuta satkathodaye mukundalinga alya darshane drishau tadbhritya gatra sparshang sangamam grahanam cha tadpada saroja saurabhe Śrīmad tulsaya rasanam tat arpite padau hari kshetra padanusarpane shiro rishi kesha padabhivandane kamam chadasya nachaka natu kama kamyaya yatho uttama shloka jana ashraya ratihi. Hare Krishna. Such beautiful words. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Maharaj Ambarish always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Kṛṣṇa, his words in describing the glories of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the temple, the Lord's temple, and his ears in hearing the words spoken by Kṛṣṇa or about Kṛṣṇa. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Kṛṣṇa, Krishna's temple and Krishna's places like Mathura and Vrindavan. He engaged his sense of touch in touching the bodies of the Lord's devotees. He engaged his sense of smelling in smelling the fragrance of tulasi offered to the Lord. And he engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasad. He engaged his legs in walking to the holy places. He engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and the temples of the Lord, his head in bowing down before the Lord, in all his desires in serving the Lord 24 hours a day. Indeed, Maharaj Ambarish never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in devotional service, in various engagements related to the Lord. This is the way to increase attachment for the Lord and be completely free from all material desires. Wow. Seems like we should read it 108 times. Purport. Bhagavad Gita 7.1. The Lord recommends Maya Sakta Mana Partha Yogam Yunjan Madashraya. This indicates that one must execute devotional service under the guidance of a devotee or directly under the guidance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is not possible, however, to train oneself without the guidance from the spiritual master. Therefore, according to the instructions of Srila Rupa Goswami, the first business of a devotee is to accept a bona fide spiritual master who can train him to engage his various senses in rendering transcendental service to the Lord. The Lord also says in Bhagavad Gita, Asanshayam samagram mam yatha gyasasi tat shrinu. In other words, if one wants to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead in completeness, one must follow the prescriptions given by Kṛṣṇa by following in the footsteps of Mahârāja Ambarîsha. It is said, Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate. Bhakti means to engage the senses in the service of the master of the senses, Kṛṣṇa, who is called Rishikesha or Achyuta. These words are used in these verses. Achyuta Satkathodaye, Rishikesha Padabhivandane. The words Achyuta and Rishikesha are also used in the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is Kṛṣṇa Katha, spoken directly by Kṛṣṇa. And Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is also Kṛṣṇa Katha, because everything is described in the Bhagavatam is in relationship with Kṛṣṇa. Jai Shri Prabhupada. So, wow, this is nectar. This is like the verse we should read multiple times and churn upon it over and over again, because this is so nectarian. So let's kind of sum it up here, what we are reading in this verse through the kind of how we can use all the senses in the service of the master of senses. So the first line is Savai Manah Krishna Padara Vindayo. How did he engage his mind? Mana. Who will answer that? You devotees can quickly answer that, please. How can we engage our mind?
Meditating on Krishna.
Yes, meditating upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. That's the Savai Mana Krishna Padar Vinda. Padar Vinda means, Arvinda means lotus, Pada means lotus feet. Mana Krishna Padar Vinda. Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanuvarnani. So, Vacha. How can we engage our speech? Vacha. A lot of verses start with Uvacha. How can we engage that? As per this verse, what did we learn? Anyone?
Describe the glories of the Lord.
Yes, wonderful. Vaikuntha Guna Nuvarnani. About Guna means qualities. So, glorify. Glorify the name form qualities of Krishna. Very nice. Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanuvarnani Karau Harir Mandir Marjinadisho. Kara Tava Kara Kamalavari Kara. Kara means hands. How can we engage our hands as per these words?
Cleaning the temple of Hari.
Yes, Hari Mandir Marjanadishu. Gundicha Marjan is coming in just a few days before the Rath Yatra. I was hearing yesterday or Sunday, I was hearing about beautiful class about Mandir Marjan, Gundicha Marjan. How Lord Chaitanya is so enthusiastically with hundreds and hundreds of devotees cleaning the temple of the Lord with, as if he had, His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj was explaining, as if he had thousands of hands. He made a pile which was equivalent to thousands of devotees made a pile put together. And so much devotion, so much love, because our hands are a blessing which have been given by the Lord, not to engage in wrong things, but to clean the temple of the Lord. And that way, we will clean our heart as well. So clean the temple of Lord. And then only Lord Jagannath comes to Gundicha. So Gundichari is also representing our heart. Karo Harir Mandir Ma Shrutim Chakar Achyuta Sadkathodaye. So hearing or ears, how can we engage our ears or the sense of hearing here as per this verse?
Hearing Krishna Katha.
Yes, Sat Kathodaye, Achyuta, about Krishna, hearing about using our ears for hearing Krishna Katha, right? Not hearing Gramya Katha, not hearing gossip, not hearing Prajalpa, not hearing all the nonsense, things which are not good for us. Mukund Ling Alya Darshanam Drishau. So, darshana, that means using our eyes. How can we use our eyes in the service of the Lord as per this verse?
Seeing the Lord,
Yes, seeing the Lord. Mukund
Visiting
Ling
the holy
Alya.
places.
Yes, holy places. The deities, I think deities we covered. Mukund Ling Alya. And temple, Ling Alya. Alya means home. Mukunda's home is holy places, temple. So all the seeing the Supreme Lord, seeing Bhagavatam is also darshanam disho, right? Because Bhagavatam is non-different from Krishna. So tad bhritya gatra sparsha anga sangamam, number 6. So the sense of touch here. How can we use our touch or skin? We will write it.
Abhishek.
Touching the feet
Touching
of
the
the
body
devotees.
of the Lord, like bathing the deities.
That's correct. But in this verse specifically, that bhritya means their servant. That bhritya gatra sparsha anga sangam. So basically embracing or touching devotees. Of course, we should keep our bodily also concept in mind. That it's not that we say, okay, I am soul, you are soul. But of course, that means Prabhu's, generally Prabhu's embrace Prabhu's. It's a very good in the so many exchanges in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. We see in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in senior devotees, we see that the devotees embrace each other. Mataji is embracing each other, Prabhuji is embracing Prabhu. That's the culture and the Vaishnava etiquette, and it is a sign of actually bhakti. It's an act of devotion. So it's very, very good. And touching also could be, massaging the Vaishnavas or touching the deities also. That's also correct. Sometimes assisting them or in some bodily help also they may need. If there are some old devotees, so we may be able to serve them in that way also, which is rare, but it is a great opportunity. So tadbhritya gatrangas grihanam cha tadpad saroj saurabhe. Now we are talking about the nose. How can we engage the nose in service of the Supreme Lord?
Smelling the incense or tulsi leaves, it says.
Yeah,
To
smelling
Krishna.
the fragrance. Tadpad saroj saurabhe. The tulsi is at the lotus feet of the Lord, and that saurabha is fragrance. To experience, to relish the prasad, or the prasad also means anything coming from the Lord. This fragrance, smelling the fragrance of tulasi coming from Krishna's lotus feet, tadpada, that means his feet, coming from his feet. Then grihanam, that we cover, rasanam tad arpide, rasanam tad arpide. Thus the Tongue. How can we engage the tongue?
Eat the prasadam.
Yeah, we don't say we eat prasadam, we say we honor prasad, or here tasting or honoring the Krishna Prasad. Lord Jagannath's birthday or his Stan Yatra is there just a few days back, and now the Rath Yatra is coming. So, one of the benedictions which this king Nilachal, what was his name? Nilamadav? No.
Indradumna. Indradumna.
He asked for one benediction that the Lord, your hands will always be wet. That means once you eat, you wash the hands, and before the hands dry, the next meal will come. The Lord keeps eating, and the devotees keep eating, and then by eating, they go back home, back to Godhead. Prabhupada said that one time, eat your way back home, back to Godhead. Or also said, ours is kitchen religion. So honoring Krishna Prasad, it's an act of devotion. In Chaitanya Charitamrita also we see so many exchanges of such nice exchange. Like recently there was a festival, Manjulali gave a nice class about Pani Hati Chiradai. That's the whole festival is about eating, how everyone is eating and relishing Krishna Prasadam, honoring Krishna Prasadam, which is a great act of devotion. So that's how we can engage Rasanam Tad Arpite. Padau Harishetra Padanusarpani. How can we engage our pada or legs? Anyone?
Going to the temple.
Yes, Harishetra. Harishetra means place. Hari means the Lord. So wherever the Lord is present, so that means going to the temple, going to holy places, etc. So walking or in modern days driving or flying, whatever way, in car, bus, cycle, walking to holy places, temples, circumambulating, devotees, deities, Tulsi Maharani, etc. So that's how we can engage our legs also in Padau, Harishetra, Padanusarpani. Then Shiro, Rishikesha, Padabhivandani. How about the head? Shira, Shirshasana, headstand. Shira, how can we engage the head in our Krishna service?
By Dandavat Pranam.
By Dandavat Pranam, very good. Basically, that means bowing down. Padau, Padabhivandan, Abhivandan. Vandan means again offering respects or bowing down before the Lord, before the devotees. So, Padau, Harishetra, Shiro, Rishikesha. Rishikesha again is the name of Krishna, who is the master of senses. Padabhi Vandani. Bowing down at Lord Krishna's lotus feet. That's the exact meaning. Padabhi Vandani. Then Shiro Rishikesha. Kamam Chadasya Natu Kama Kamyaya. How about our desires or activities?
Having
Kam.
spiritual desires.
Yes. Kamam Chadasya. That means our desire should be in Lord's service. Natu Kama Kamyaya. Not for one's own sense gratification. So, desire for service of Krishna and devotees. Not for one's own sense gratification. Natu Kama Kamyaya. Then Yatha Uttama Shloka Jana Shraya Ratihi. And then the last point is we have to develop rati or attachment to whom? To those who have taken shelter of the Supreme Lord. He did all this to develop attachment for the Lord as possessed by great devotees. Yatha Uttama Shloka. Uttama Shloka means those who, Uttama Shloka, the choicest verses. This is also used multiple times here in this connection. Yatha Uttama Shloka Jana Ashraya Rati. So, by following the parampara system. So very, very important how Ambarish Maharaj got all these things, because he took shelter of Uttama Shloka Jana, Ashraya. He took Ashraya of these great devotees. That means he followed the bona fide parampara system. He followed the bona fide guru, and that's how he was able to engage his mind, his eyes, nose, ears, tongue, everything. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate. Everything in the service of the master of the senses, and which is the goal of life. So this is a very, very deep verse which we should ponder upon, contemplate, try to go deeper. And those who feel inspired can try to learn as well. As Prabhupada quotes this multiple times, we will see this in multiple verses from Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. We will see this everywhere. In Prabhupada's conversations, in lectures, and in room conversations, letters, everywhere. So anyone has any other comments, additions, questions here for this verse in particular? Because there are so many important points in this verse.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I really appreciate how you explained and went in details. Just one small thing I would like to add is Prabhupada explicitly says that hearing of the words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. So it's very amazing how Prabhupada says that, and so that we can also include reading Bhagavad Gita, because those are the words spoken by Krishna. And Prabhupada here explicitly says that Bhagavad Gita is the Krishna Katha spoken by Krishna, and Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is Krishna Katha. It's because it's about everything in relationship to Krishna. I hope that's okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mataji. That's such an important point. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anyone else has any other comments on this verse? Any additions or questions? Okay, so let's read the next verse. Anyone who didn't get a chance yesterday?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Can I read?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
go ahead, Mataji.
Okay, thank you, Dandat Pranam devotees. The next verse is text 21. Evam sada karma kala pamatmanaha paredhi yagye bhagavati adhokshaje sarvatma bhavam vidha dhanma himi mam tannishtha viprapihita shashasaha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. In performing his prescribed duties as king, Mahârâja Ambarîsha always offered the results of his royal activities to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kṛṣṇa, who is the enjoyer of everything and is beyond the perception of material senses. He certainly took service from Brahmanas, who were faithful devotees of the Lord, and thus he ruled the planet Earth without difficulty. Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 5.29, Bhoktaram yagyatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suharitam sarvabhutanam gyatva shantim richati. People are very much anxious to live in peace and prosperity in this material world. And here in Bhagavad Gita, the peace formula is given personally by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everyone should understand that Kṛṣṇa, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the ultimate proprietor of all the planets and is therefore the enjoyer of all activities, political, social, cultural, religious, economic, and so on. The Lord has given perfect advice on Bhagavad Gita, and Ambarish Maharaja, as the ideal executive head, ruled the entire world as a Vaishnava, taking advice from Vaishnava Brahmanas. The Shastras enjoin that even though a Brahmana may be well versed in the occupational Brahminical duties and may be very, very learned in Vedic knowledge, he cannot give advice as a guru until he is a Vaishnava. You want me to read till where, Prabhu? Shatkarma nipuno vipro mantra tantra visharadaha avaishnavo gurur nashad Vaishnava Swa Pacho Guru. Therefore, as indicated here by the words Tan Nishtha Vipra Bhitaha, Maharaja Ambarish took advice from the Brahmanas who were pure devotees of the Lord. For ordinary Brahmanas who are merely learned scholars or experts in performing ritualistic ceremonies are not competent to give advice. In modern times, there are legislative assemblies whose members are authorized to make laws for the welfare of the state. But according to this description of the kingdom of Mahârâja Ambarîsha, the country or the world should be ruled by a chief executive whose advisors are all devotee Brahmanas. Such advisors or members of the legislative assembly should not be professional politicians, nor should they be selected by the ignorant public. Rather, they should be appointed by the king. When the king, the executive head of the state, is a devotee and he follows the instructions of devotee Brahmanas in ruling the country, everyone will be peaceful and prosperous. When the king and his advisors are perfect devotees, nothing can be wrong in the state. All the citizens should become devotees of the Lord, and then their good character will automatically follow. I will pause here. Somebody else can read probably perhaps the next thing. And so the couple of things here. Maharaja Ambarish always took advice from the Brahmanas, basically Vaishnavas, to rule the earth. And Prabhupada stresses on this point many times, like to have Ram Rajya, to have a very peaceful, to have peace and prosperity, one must be take advice from the Vaishnava Brahmanas. For the king must take this advice. It's king's duty to obey Brahmanas. King is a Kshatriya, and it's king's very important duty to take advice from them and then rule. So he's not the proprietor of the kingdom, but he's merely a custodian. And second thing is that Maharaja Ambarish, there was no difficulty. He ruled the planet Earth without any difficulty. So because he's engaged, he's completely engaged, as we just read, in serving Kṛṣṇa, the result has to be extremely auspicious, Sukhada. And social, cultural, religious, economic, and so on developments were there happening there. Prabhupada once was asked, is this a civilization? What about American civilization or something, Western civilization? And Prabhupada said, that's a good idea. So basically, civilization, this is civilization, what this Ambarish Maharaja's kingdom is referring to. There's a development on all fronts. And it's only possible because it's a Kṛṣṇa conscious way of ruling the planet Earth. Back to you, Prabhu. Thank you. Dandavats.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Yes, Sudhir Prabhu, you want to continue from here?
Sure, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, devotees, Dandavat Pranam, Bhagavatam Shri Prabhupada. Yasyasti Bhaktir Bhagavate Akinchana Sarver Gunas Tatra Samaste Sura Hare Abhyaktasya Kuto Mahad Guna Manorathena Sati Dhato Vahi. One who has unflinching devotion for the personality of Godhead has all the good qualities of the demigods. But one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications that are very little value. This is because he is hovering on the material mental plane and is certain to be attracted by the glaring material energy. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, 5th Canto, 18th chapter, 12th verse, says, citizens under the guidance of Kṛṣṇa consciousness king will become devotees, and then there will be no need to enact new laws every day to reform the way of life in the state. If the citizens are trained to become devotees, they will automatically become peaceful and honest. If they are guided by devoted king, advised by devotees, the state will not be in the material world, but in the spiritual world. All the states of the world should therefore follow the ideal of the rule or administration of King Ambarîsha as described here. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, wonderful translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. He gave a practical, reasons how to improve the whole world into Krishna consciousness. I think I remember somebody asked Srila Prabhupada, how at that time I think World War II was, going on, and after, I'm not very sure some other war, but yeah, I think Vietnam War or something. But Prabhupada said that if we train everyone to be devotees of Krishna in Krishna consciousness, then there will not be any jealousy towards each other. The whole world will be Krishna consciousness, like it will be one nation, it is Krishna's nation. So if we can see the soul, the super soul in each other's, then even uh, the animals, the trees, the birds, you'll appreciate them. So in the same way, Srila Prabhupada is telling that King Ambarîsha was of that category. So he used to, see Lord Krishna, super soul in everybody's heart, and then that is the how he made the whole his kingdom devotees. And of course, here Prabhupada is telling that the kings should have the devotees as the devotees of the Lord as the advisors. So in that way, there will be no jealousy, no hatred, and all these things like no COVID or anything like that, because we treat each other with respect. That's my understanding. Please correct. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Nandini Mataji, Sudhir Prabhu, for sharing such wonderful lessons from this verse. So, ideal rule. Why? Because he was a great devotee, engaging his mind, senses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, everything. Following the parampara system, following the guru, uttama shloka janashri rati. And that's how he developed divine qualities. Yasyastir bhakti bhagavati akinchanat sarve gunai tatra samasate sura. All the divine qualities manifest. And very, very important, he took advice from devotees. That the point is emphasized here, from Vaishnava Brahmanas who were Lord's pure devotees, not ordinary so-called people. So one time I was hearing His Grace Vishishika Prabhu, who was mentioning that we are also running a government. Ambarish Maharaj was running a government, very big government, right? And to run the government, he needs advice, good advice from devotee Brahmanas, Vaishnavas. We are running a very tiny government of our own life, our own body, mind, senses, etc., our own family. And in that also we make decisions, correct? We all make decisions to do this, to do that, etc. So we should let this government of our own life, family, work, etc., be ruled by the guidance of devotee Brahmanas, Vaishnavas. Then it will be very nice. But if we take advice from so-called Tom, Dick, Harry, ignorant people who have no idea of spiritual life, then what will they say? They will not talk about Krishna consciousness, because to them, Krishna consciousness is not a priority. So they will talk about their ignorant materialistic ideas. So we should be very careful in whom we take guidance from. Otherwise, we will just this government will not flourish. Our life, the government of our life, the goal of life will not flourish. Rather, this will get corrupted. by the ignorant ideas of ignorant people who have no idea of Krishna consciousness. Rather, Narottam Das Thakur says, Guru Sadhu Vakya Chitete Kori Akya. Always remembering the words of Guru Sadhu Shastra. Yeah. Guru Sadhu Shastra Vakya Chitete Kori Akya. So, ruling our life by the words of Guru Sadhu and Shastra, then it will be wonderful. If not, then the government will just fall down. Any other comments before we move on to the next? Okay, Lakshya Babu, Prabhu, you want to read?
Vijay Asvamedair Adiyagnan Ishwaram Mahavibhutyo Pachitanga Dakshinai Tatair Vasishtastida Gautam Dibir Danvani Ahistrotam Asaus Sarvasvatim. Translation. In desert countries where there flowed the river Saraswati, Mahârâja Ambarish performed great sacrifices like Aswamedha Yajna and thus satisfied the master of all yajnas, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such sacrifices were performed with the great opulence and suitable paraphernalia and with the contribution of Dakshina to Brahmanas who were supervised by great personality like Vasishtha, Asita and Gautama, representing the kings, the performer of the sacrifice. Purport. When one performs a ritualistic sacrifice as prescribed in Vedas, one needs expert Brahmanas known as Yagnika Brahmanas. In Kali Yuga, however, there is a scarcity of such Brahmanas. Therefore, in Kali Yuga, the sacrifice recommended in Shastra is Sankirtana Yajna. Yagnai Sankirtana Praye Yagnatihi Sumedesha. Instead of spending money unnecessarily on performing Yajna, impossible to perform the age of Kali because of scarcity of Yajna Brahmana. One who is intelligent performs Sankirtana Yajna. Without properly performed Yajna to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there will be a scarcity of rain. Yajnat Bhavati Parjanya. Therefore, the performance of Yajna is essential. Without Yajna, there will be a scarcity of rain. Because of this scarcity, no food, grains will be produced, and there will be famines. It is duty of king, therefore, to perform different types of Yajna, such as Aswamedha Yajna to maintain the production of food grains, Annad Bhavati Bhutani. Without food grain, both men and animals will starve. Therefore, Yajna is necessary for the state to perform, because by Yajna, people in general will be fed sumptuously. The Brahmanas and Yajna's price should be sufficiently paid for their expert service. This payment is called Dakshina. Ambarîsha Maharaji, as a head of the state, performed all these yajnas throughout the great personality like Vasishtha, Gautama, and Asita. Personally, however, he was engaged in devotional service, as mentioned before. Savai Mamna Kṛṣṇa Padarvani Dhyao. The king or head of the state must see that things go on well under proper guidance, and he must be an ideal devotee. As exemplified by Mahârâja Ambarish, it is a duty of the king to see that food grains are produced even in a desert countries, what to speak elsewhere. So Hare Krishna Prabhuji, before sharing this purport, previous purport, one of the important point I can see that if leaders are chosen by ignorant people, definitely those leaders also will be ignorant. So even we say democracy in nowadays, but the leaders are chosen by ignorant people because they are not able to decide for their own life how they can choose no right leader. That is a very valid point what Durvâsâ is mentioning. So in this purport, we can see the importance of yajna. So Ambarish Maharaj, he did the yajna and provided required no dakshina to the great sages, Vasishtha and other thing. So this is the kind of ideal scenario. That is what Prabhupada has mentioned. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for your wonderful comments and thoughtful reflections. It's so interesting. I was just talking to one devotee and this point came up that if all the students of a class, imagine it's like all 5th graders, 4th graders, how many students love exams? Maybe 1%, 2%, 5%, right? And most are afraid of it. Is that correct? Did I say right? You agree with that? And if a voting is done, okay, how many of you want to give exams? How many will say yes? And how many will say no? Right?
Everyone will say no only, Prabhupada.
They will say no, we don't want to do it. So that's what is happening, as you rightly said. If the ignorant people, the exam is for the betterment of the child, not to punish the child. Correct? Exam is to help the child to grow, not to punish the child or not to fail the child, but to test the child for. So that's what is happening. Is a very important point you shared. Now coming back to, there's a verse in Bhagavad Gita, Yajna Dana Tapa Pavanani Manishina. That Yajna Dana and Tapa, which Ambarish Maharaj is showing, giving charity, dakshina, proper paraphernalia to the Brahmanas, Vaishnavas, Guru, etc., doing yajna for the welfare of the whole kingdom, for the pleasure of the Yajna Purusha, that is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the purpose of yajna, to please Kṛṣṇa, to please Brahmanas, to please Vaishnavas, by whatever best we can do. And in Kali Yuga, Prabhupada is mentioning, whenever the word yajna comes, Prabhupada always mentions that yajna sankirtana prayaj jajanti hi sumedasa. What is the yajna in Kali Yuga? Sankirtana yajna. Because there is scarcity, we discussed this in last Bhagavad Gita class as well. There is scarcity of proper brahmanas, scarcity of proper ingredients, scarcity of time. Who has time to sit for like 5 hours to do proper yajna? Preparing for these yajna takes few hours, what to speak of doing these proper yajnas. So, in short, we must do the Sankirtan Yajna and engage our mind in the service of the Supreme Lord. So that's what Ambarish Maharaj was doing in the desert. That's an important point Prabhupada is reflecting near the Saraswati river, where the Saraswati river flowed. He was performing this Ashwamedh Yajna, because it is a duty of the king to make sure the food grains are being properly there, distributed, and then we are dependent on Annad Bhavati, Annad Bhavanti Bhutani. Without the food grains, both the men and animals will starve. So there is a dependent cycle, as mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita also. So this is what was going on at that time. Anyone has any other comments, any additions, questions on this? Yes, Mataji.
On all these texts, Prabhupada reminds us that the only problem in this world is a lack of Krishna consciousness. And it comes again and again. Here also he says that if people are Krishna conscious, then there will be absolutely no problems. There will be only peace and prosperity.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mataji. That's such a wonderful point. Anyone else has any other comments, realizations, thoughts? Okay, we'll read one last verse for today before we pause. Yes, Sampada Mataji. Yes, Sampada Mataji. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Text 23. Yasya kartusu girvana hi sadasya ritvijo janaha tulya rupaschani misa vyadrisyanta suvasasaha. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In the sacrifice arranged by Mahârâja Ambarîsha, the members of the assembly and the priest, especially Hota, Udgata, Brahma, and Advaryu, were gorgeously dressed, and they all looked exactly like demigods. They eagerly saw to the proper performance of the yajna. Hare Krishna, Babuji, back to me.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji, for reading this wonderful verse. So this is text 23. We were reading this in the Bhagavad Gita, also chapter 4. The members of the family, they're Hota, Udgata, Brahma, the different names of the priest, were gorgeously dressed. And they looked like demigods. So there are different priests, to make sure there is, again, I don't know all the details, but there's one to make sure that the fire is going properly. There's one to make sure the mantras are properly chanted. There's one to make sure who is chanting the mantras. There is one to make sure all the ingredients are nice and clean and pure. There are so many things which need to be taken care for a proper execution of the yajna. So there are different, even the priests, they're like subcategories here. So they eagerly sought the proper performance of yajna, because that was asked. That was their service, in short. So they all looked like demigods. Anything else? Anyone wants to add or share?
So this Brahma must be different than Creator Brahma.
Correct. Yeah, this is more like a position here. These are titles actually. These are like titles, like in the priestly order. We read. Do you remember? We read recently in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4. We read this Brahma verse, which was that chapter 4, which was text 23 or something like that. We recently read this one. Let me take us to Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. And actually, it's so interesting that whatever the words we are reading here, Yadichya Labha Santushto Dvando Vimatsara Sama Siddhava Siddhocha. This is what Ambarish Maharaj is following actually. Nirashaya Chittatma Tyaktva Sarva Parigriha Shriram Kevalam Karma Kurvan Apnoti Kilbisha. This is what Ambarish Maharaj is actually doing. We see that he's not without desire for result, with controlled mind and intelligence. Keep just giving up the sense, sarva tyaktva sarva parigraha, giving up the sense of proprietorship, because the real proprietor is Krishna. So Bhagavata spoken by Lord and Bhagavatam spoken about Lord, or in relationship Lord, to give examples. Gata sangasya muktasya cha. So all these verses, this was the point. Brahma Varparam, Brahma Havir, Brahma Agnau, Brahma Hutam, or Huta was there. Huta or Huta, Brahma Tena, Gantapyam, Brahma Karma, Samadhina. This is like the 6 transcendental things we discussed. Anyone remembers? What are the 6 transcendental things? Who remembers from the Bhagavad Gita class last Saturday? Text 4.24 of Bhagavad Gita.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Mataji.
There are 6 things. For yagna, right? For the yagna. Yeah. So one is for spiritual oblations. This is arpanam, and then habi means whichever we are offering to the yagna. Then fire, agni, and then qualified priest, and then the destination where we are, the yagna is like whom we are doing the yagna, the destination, and then the karma, like
Activities.
activities. Yeah.
The Brahma Karma.
Yeah.
And the Agni also, the fire, I think. Did you I'm not sure if you mentioned
Yeah,
that.
I mentioned agni
Okay.
and fire. Yeah.
So the ingredients, the havi, the ingredients, the instruments, the fire, the priest, the karma, the attitude of will lead to spiritual destination, that is the result or the gantavya. So this was what we discussed last time. Okay, any other comments, any additions, corrections, questions? Okay, so let's pause here and we'll see next time. That is tomorrow, I guess. So we'll read later how Ambarish Maharaj story further. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Purana ki jai, Shri Ambarish Maharaj ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Samveta Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyo vishupatitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare